Hi, I'm Jonathan, and today on Hanging Out with the Guides, we have Scott Graham. Scott, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jonathan. Nice to be here.
Scott works as a business coach in Boston, Massachusetts. When he's not helping people get more balance, direction, and fulfillment in their lives, he is practicing Vipassana meditation, writing books, doing Tough Mudders, volunteering as an EMT and firefighter, or working a farm with alpacas, Romney sheep, French Angora rabbits, and Sicilian donkeys. So, Scott, tell me about who you are and what you believe your role is in this life. When you leave this world, what impact do you want to have left?
Well, I think my biggest role, Jonathan, is to help people find success in themselves without being the guru. I can't emphasize the without being the guru point strong enough. I mean, testimonials and recommendations aside, which I have a lot of. I've got hundreds of recommendations from folks. In the end run, I don't want people to say, Scott helped me. In fact, one of the things that I have in my office that kind of reminds me of this is I have a little plaque, and what it says is just simply Scott who, with a question mark. I want to create the framework. I want to ask the right questions. I believe people have the solutions in themselves. They just need to discover it. So I can't tell you how many times clients turn to me actually in the coaching session. They come to me because I've written a good book, or they've read this or they've read that, and they're like, this guy can help tell me what to do. And then we're in the coaching relationship and they say, what do you think I should do? And my first response is, I have no idea. Consistently, I say, I have no idea. When you think about it, people, besides having the solutions in themselves, we are flooded with solutions today. Whether people are depressed or fat or overworked or in healthy relationships or they're drinking too much alcohol, it's not because they don't know what to do. Amazon's flooded with books telling people what to do. There are videos like this on YouTube telling people what to do on everything. My water heater broke today. Well, it didn't break. There was a drip. And so there's all this water all over the floor. And I said, I have no idea what the heck to do to fix this. Do I need a new water heater? What do I need to do? 5-minute YouTube video showed exactly what was going on with my water heater and what to do to fix it. So everything we need to know is out there. And I don't think people need another expert or guru or consultant to tell them what to do. They need somebody to tell them what's going on and how to tap into what they know they already need but are not acting on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that perspective. I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah, so that's my role consistently, whether it's now as a coach or when I was working as an Outward Bound instructor or when I was working as a substance abuse counselor or a psychotherapist. It really comes down to the same piece, helping people tap into what they already know they need and already know what they need to do, but they're not acting on it.
I agree. We need more people like that. We don't need people to tell people what to do, because then it's their own perspective from their own GPS in their own car telling someone else what to do. You might as well just help people figure out how to use their own GPS. They already have the answers. They already have the directions, and then they can just tap into them themselves.
That's a great metaphor. I like that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So how did you get to where you are today? Tell me some of the key parts of your story that might allow people, wherever they are in their own paths, to relate to you and the path you travel to where you are now.
There were a number of key events that happened in my life that I certainly was far away from today and did not get here without trial and tribulation and struggle. And I think the first big thing for me was hiking the Appalachian Trail. In fact, interestingly enough, my name, if someone looks at my name, says G. Scott Graham, like F. Scott Fitzgerald. And the Appalachian Trail was such a big deal for me. When I started hiking the Appalachian Trail, I was called Greg, or at least I introduced myself and people said, "What is your name?" I said, "Greg." Once I finished the Appalachian Trail, I started introducing myself by my middle name, Scott. And that was such a big shift for me in terms of self-reliance, perseverance. I did it by myself. So I was in my, I don't know, early 20s, maybe, yeah, early 20s. And I didn't know what I was doing. It was a time where there wasn't a lot of information. This was in the 80s when there wasn't a lot of information on the internet about anything. You just had to figure it out. There were no GPSs, smartphones. It was just map and compass. And away I went to do 2,100 miles. And it was quite the adventure, but it was also very difficult at times. I felt like giving up. I felt like quitting. I got poison ivy. I had all kinds of things happen to me along the way, and I just had to push through. So that's one big piece. It taught me the value of perseverance and tenacity and hanging in there. And then I brought that to my work for Outward Bound. I had done an Outward Bound course in the Florida Everglades in, I think, 1984. And that was just a 9-day course. And I was, I don't know, 18, 19, still in college. The big thing about that for me was that it was the first time that I came out as a gay man to a lot of strangers. And this was a huge deal. This was 1984. Think about that compared to today and the world that we're in today. And I can still remember that moment where we were finishing up the course, and it was the second to the last day, and we were talking about what we got out of the course and what we thought of each other and giving each other feedback. It's typically what you do on an Outward Bound course at the very end. And I finished my sentence about what I got out of the course, and then I said, took a deep breath. I said, and one more thing. I really consider you my friends, and I just want to, I feel it's important that you know that I'm gay. And I said it really fast. I almost said it like that. I want you to really know that I'm gay. And then it felt like I was in a bubble, like a vacuum. It seemed like it was 40 minutes, but of course it was only seconds. And I remember one of the Outward Bound instructors, his name was Doc, he said, I'm a vegetarian and I don't like meat. And he went on this little story about how he didn't like meat and he thought meat was terrible, blah, 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 blah. And he one day met a butcher. And then he discovered that this butcher was a human being and had all of these other things. And it wasn't the best example to bridge around compassion and acceptance. But at that moment, I think it's what people needed to hear. And I still remember this. What was that, 1984? And it's 2015. That's, wow, 30 some years later. I still remember that standing out very much. So that was a big shift. What else? I practice Vipassana meditation, and I typically do 2 10-day courses a year. And I go to this little center in Massachusetts, and they're all over the world, this Vipassana practice that I do. And the first time, it's been a huge impact in my life because I was just wrapped up, lots of knots, anxious, quick to make judgment, worrisome, all the things that people don't like to have in their emotional life. And I did this Vipassana course, and it was horrible. It was like the worst, most grueling experience that I ever had. In fact, on the second day of the course, so it starts on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we had lunch, and then I was sitting listening to the teaching on these courses. They have teachings at the end of the day. And I'm listening to this teaching, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. this sitting constantly, this meditating constantly, this is not a good place. I'm thinking I'm going to be sick. And lo and behold, I started getting sicker and sicker. So this teacher is teaching, doing this Dhamma talk, and which is like a sermon or a lecture for about an hour. And literally, I stood up in the back of the room and I walked out the door. I took maybe 3 steps on this cement floor, fell to my knees, and it was like projectile vomiting that you would see in a movie, all over the floor. And the course manager, because they have managers who run the course, came out, and I was a mess. I was like in tears, and I was like, this is bad. And he was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he's like, "Okay, well, why don't you go just wash your face, clean yourself up, and then go back in the hall?" And I looked at him like, "What are you, crazy?" No. Number 1, I'm leaving. Number 2, I'm cleaning this. You're not going to clean up my vomit while I go back in the hall. That's just crazy. But he was so compassionate and so caring and so patient that it just like I was flooded with the love and acceptance from him. And literally, I washed my face. I went back in. I talked to the teacher afterwards. I ended up finishing the course, and after that, I decided this is an important path for me to follow, because clearly, the people that are involved here are learning love and caring and support. So there's a number of events, but those are probably the big 3: the Appalachian Trail, Outward Bound, and this starting to practice Vipassana.
Those are some powerful stories. Thank you for sharing those.
You're welcome.
What are some of the most important lessons you've learned on your journey, and who have been some of your greatest teachers?
Well, Jonathan, like I just shared, that course manager was a huge teacher for me. That Outward Bound instructor was a huge teacher for me. So it's not like, I have this list of all, Tony Robbins, Campbell. I could have this huge list, Covey, all these people that are teachers for me. They've written books. They have a certain amount of wisdom to share, but the biggest teachers in my life have been my friends, the people that have supported me, and people like that, the course manager and that Outward Bound instructor, huge impact on my life. Some of the things that I've learned over time from these folks and other ones, I think the first one, and it's like actually one of my favorite phrases I have in my office. I have all these things that surround me to inspire me. And like I said, the piece of Scott Hu, and here's another one within arm's reach, if I can get it off the wall. I made this picture. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's I have these things that inspire me. And the phrase on this picture is a Pali term called yatha bhuta. And what those words mean is to accept and see things as they are, with, and this is the important piece, not as you would like them to be. I think that piece I think about a lot, because it has to do with acceptance. It has to do with one of the root causes that I see with folks of not being happy, not being miserable, being anxious, because they don't accept things as they are. They're totally focused on, it has to be this way. Why isn't this way? How come this isn't going? Why don't people act this way? Why does this person speak bad to me? Why is this thing happening? And so really, for me, connecting the dots around that as it is, not as you would like it to be. Though that's really key. And actually, that's a very recent, I've gotten that from Vipassana, and I've been practicing Vipassana for 20 years. And only recently has the power of that phrase kind of stuck with me. The second lesson that I would say is a big lesson to remember is that, and it's related to this, and that is change is inevitable. How I am today is not how I was 20 years ago. It's not how I'm going to be 20 years from now. And the house, my dog, my spouse, everything around me is constantly changing. And if I don't recognize that that change goes on and accept that that change goes on, then I'm going to run into problems. And I mean, a great example of change is inevitable is your car, right? We don't buy a car and expect that we're going to own this car and magically 5 years later, it's going to be the exact same car that we drove home from the dealership. It might have rust. It's going to have different tires. You're going to have to replace all these things. It means owning that car means that we have to put in work because that car is going to change and we have to do things to maintain it. And so that kind of relates to my third kind of important lesson, and that is relationships of any kind require work. I think it's a sad commentary that we have so many people that get into significant relationships, get married, and then a few years later, they're gone. On to the next person. And it almost seems like people put more energy into maintaining their cars than they do their relationships. And then when their relationships struggle or fail, they wonder why. I mean, we get our oil on our cars changed every 1,500 to 3,000 miles, depending on where you're at. But you think about how many times have somebody, if you're listening to this and you're in a relationship, when was the last time you sat down with your spouse and said, how are things going? What can I do better as your spouse? What can you do better as my spouse? And do it on a regular basis like you would changing the oil in your car. Very, very tenuous does the relationship become when we don't do that. Because the person, again, change is inevitable. The person that you married 10 years ago is not the same person that they were then. And the change is just going to create misery if you hang on to that. So I've been in a long-term monogamous relationship for 27 years. And I can tell you without a doubt that the guy that I met 27 years ago is not the same guy that I see today. And I'm not the same guy. We've changed, and we have put in a tremendous amount of work into relationship tune-ups, relationship oil changes, relationship tire rotations, to talk metaphorically. And that has been a key piece that has helped us to have a relationship that has endured the test of time. So I could go on and on with lessons, but I think those three are the three biggest ones. Yata bhuta, change is inevitable, and relationships require work.
It's interesting how related all those lessons are to each other. You can see, because obviously the idea that you're accepting things as they are would allow you to recognize change and still accept things as they are. I think because change is going to be inevitable and things are going to be changing moment to moment. And if you're accepting things as they are in each moment, then you're not going to be upset by the change. You're going to accept it as it is, because that's the way it is now. And then ultimately, there's still going to be, making an effort to maintain things in a positive way, put effort into that, but that you can accept wherever things are, so that you're not acting from a place of trying to change what is so much as bringing out the best of what is in the moment as it is. And then obviously that ties into the relationships idea, that ultimately that relationships take work, because things do change. And if you are accepting things as they are at the beginning of the relationship, and you're not accepting things as they are when the relationship changes, as people naturally change and evolve, and the dynamics between them change and evolve, if you're not accepting them at that point, then the relationship breaks down. And so then the change becomes a negative change rather than one that's evolutionary and progressive. And so it's interesting how related all those are, that you would accept things in each moment, so you can accept change is inevitable, but I'm still going to be accepting things in each moment. And I'm going to be making an effort to make sure that the best changes are taking place, that things are changing in a positive direction because of the effort I put into it. And obviously in terms of relationships specifically, it's interesting how tied together all those are. And it's interesting also tying those together with your previous answer, where compassion played such a big role, because ultimately if you really have compassion for things as they are, then you can accept the changes that they undergo, and then you can allow relationships to work, because you have compassion for what's happening in the moment, what is as it is. And then that's what really allows us to have that acceptance and have relationships thrive. It's interesting to see how all those were interrelated, the lessons of your life intertwined, things that stand out to you. It's cool.
They do. And actually, until you said that, I never really considered the fact that they are really all intertwined, right? I guess in many ways I compartmentalize them. I'm like, this is an important learning, that's an important learning, that's an important learning. But there's this influence on each other that you just pointed out, that they have on each other, that end up bringing out these other successes, or these other successes. Like I didn't set out to say I want to be in a long-term 27-year relationship, right? It's not like the lesson is you make a commitment and you stick with that person. The lesson is relationships require work, change is inevitable, accept things as they are. And as you just said, I really liked it when you said, bringing out the best of the moment as it is and focusing on that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So what is the purpose of life? Why are we here?
Boy, that's a difficult question. I don't think that there's one global giant purpose that we say this is the meaning of life, or there's one giant answer. What's the meaning of life? 42, right? From Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? There's no huge piece, at least for me, that stands out there. And so for me, then the question then becomes, all right, I don't see I'm not driven with this belief system or this doctrine that says this is why we're here. We're not here to go through this and go to heaven. We're not here to go through this and get reborn. We're not here to go through this and learn lessons. So then for me, the question has become, all right, so I'm on this earth for a period of time. So what? What is my life about? And then for me, then that became helping others, and that grew and grew and grew. When I was in college, and I almost I hate to admit this, but it was part of my own development. I graduated from high school early, and I went to college it was a 4-year course of study. And I was there and I went in the summertime. My mom reminds me that I went consistently in the summers full time. So I went to college for this 4-year course of study, and I was there for 7 years. I had so many credits by the time I finished that the college gave me 2 bachelor's degrees. They might have given me 3 if they knew that it would get rid of me and I would be finished with them. But I think that I spent so much time in college spinning my wheels, and I switched majors. That's why I ended up with 2 degrees. I was an engineering major. I was a music major. I was a music composition major. I was a dual major in music and engineering. Then I took a psychology course. I'm like, this was great. So then I switched to psychology. Then I took speech communication, and I switched to that. And on and on and on it went. I went to college without a clear purpose. I went to college without a clear mission. And so then what happened is that this course of discipline sounded good. I went there. And this course of discipline sounded good. I went there. And then this sounded good. I went there. And I was pulling little pieces from each one and bouncing from here to here because I did not have a purpose. I think that's the risk for a lot of folks who don't sense that they have a purpose. So they go and they want to attach to this institution or this religion or this belief or this philosophy. And then that doesn't work out. Then they switch. I have a number of friends who have switched from Christianity to Buddhism to Judaism and vice versa. It's like, it's like the store that they walk in. It's Macy's or Gimbel's. So for me, when I sit down and think about, all right, so I don't see this global philosophical piece. What am I here for? It comes down to helping other people, being of service to other people, being a resource for other folks. And that is consistent now in every area of my life. It was true when I was an Outward Bound instructor. It was true when I was a counselor. It's true as I'm a coach. I'm an EMT. I'm a volunteer firefighter. It's the service and helping other people that is the common thread across all of those pieces in my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's good to be clear about your mission and be able to build your life around it like that.
And there was a time, Jonathan, many years where I was not clear, and it really showed. I was just from here to there and everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I hear. So tell me about God, or what is God, and what is our relation to such a source or being, or however you think of this?
Jonathan, as I was kind of talking about in this in response to the last question about the purpose of life, and that I don't hang my hat on a specific doctrine or philosophy. So I don't see God as some sort of supreme being that is manipulating or punishing or rewarding us like chess pieces. Like, well, if I want this to happen, I'll pray for that. My child's sick, so I'll pray for that, so God made him well. Or like, if I pray to this God, then this will happen. Or if I make this offering or penance, then this will happen. Or worse, what a lot of people hear is, if I don't do this, then bad things will happen. Misery will happen. I'll go to hell. I'll go to this or go to that. So when I think of what is God, the question for me focuses more on thinking about what are the qualities of God-like people. And so if you think for a second of somebody who is God-like, and I don't mean powerful, I mean somebody who is, somebody like Martin Luther King, someone like Muhammad, some like Jesus, somebody like that is there doing service for to other people. What do they teach? Thich Nhat Hanh. What is that about? What even think about that in a godlike way? A monk who is walking through minefields to serve other folks, to set off mines so other people don't get hurt, right? Martin Luther King, what did he teach about loving kindness? About sympathetic joy. And so when I think about God, those are the two terms actually that come to my mind. Loving kindness, which is true kind of the love that Jesus showed, right? When you think about Jesus on the cross, what were the last words that came out of his mouth, which was just before he said, I'm giving myself up to you. It was pure love. Forgive these people. They don't know what they're doing. It was like pure love and faith in people. So that piece, loving kindness, is kind of a core piece when I think about who is God and what is God. God lives in some ways in loving kindness, in our actions around that. And then this kind of concept, which I really like, of sympathetic joy, which is this kind of unselfish happiness for the things that other people get, or the other things that are going on in other people's lives. So yeah, this is really going well for you. I'm glad for this. There's not that tinge of jealousy that so often comes out, right? Because there's not that piece when you think of these people that I talked about, these godlike people. You don't see jealousy and irksome and hatred and all. You don't see any of those things. You just see compassion. You just see love. You just see celebrating other folks. So for me, although I don't hold on to some specific doctrine or philosophy or religion per se, those aspects, those qualities really come out to me as to what God is.
I hear that. It's a good philosophy to live by, to be able to look for the best in the people who stand out in a lot of ways as really having positive influences, and then to be able to find that in ourselves and emulate that. That's a powerful message, to be able to live like that rather than imposing something on ourselves or others, to be able to live what feels like the best version of human beings, to live that ourselves and look for that in others. It sounds really good.
Right, and I think that's a great way that you put that. And you see in a lot of Christian faiths that you see, what would Jesus do on bracelets, on T-shirts, on plaques, and the answer to that question is so much more profound. You don't have to remember these 10 rules, these 12 rules, these 15 things, these 8 things. If you identify, like you just said, this godlike person, you can find the answers from within yourself. What would Martin Luther King do if he were in my shoes? What would Jesus do if he were in my shoes? What would Buddha do if he was in my shoes? What would Thich Nhat Hanh do if he was in my position? And then you've got a wealth of rules or answers that you can pull out of that. I like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting the way you added that. And asking what these other people would do if they were in your shoes, it's like you're actually checking with your GPS, which person should I look to right now, and how can I find that in me? And then what would that be in me, and how would I express that, and what would that be in this situation? And then it's like calling upon what these people represent as aspects of ourselves, that they've come to express that outwardly, that we could do that as well, because that exists in us in some way, and we're thinking of that for that reason. And then it's, let me check with myself, going back to your first answer, your answer to the first question, that ultimately we ideally would be helping people in connecting with their own guidance, their own answers. They already have their own answers, that we could recognize that the world, the people around us representing these great ways of being in a lot of ways, that they're representing aspects of us that we could bring out in ourselves in particular situations when they're relevant, and that we can therefore be connecting with our own internal guidance and really connecting with our own answers, and finding that we have all the answers. We have the wisdom about what to do in any particular moment, and it's up to us simply to recognize, what would someone do is really asking, what would that best part of me do? That aspect of me that really is in some ways the best part of me. What would that part of me do in this situation? And how can I let that part act through me right now?
I like that piece, Jonathan, that you just said, the best part of me. Because when you think about that, like you've used this internal GPS a number of times, we all know what that best part of ourselves is. We just, in the frantic world we live in the information bombardment that comes, that sometimes drowns out that voice, that best part of me. And so it's not a matter of this level of attunement or this thing or that level or go through these sacraments or do these blessings. Those are great tools, but ultimately I think those tools, like you just pointed out, help people get more aware of the best part of themselves. I mean, I was raised a Catholic. You just don't go for First Holy Communion. There's a whole bunch of education, of insight, of other stuff that goes along with getting that sacrament. And so these tools that are there, these religious tools that are there, I think help people tap into the best part of themselves.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. How does the universe work? What are the most fundamental rules or laws by which everything in the world operates?
I think the biggest rule and the rule that connects everything together is that you reap what you sow. We've heard that phrase. Most people probably have heard that phrase from, different religious philosophies, from different stories, from different books. But I think every day in some way we're planting seeds. And as we talked about in this last question, we are either planting seeds for our best self or our worst self. Seeds for happiness or seeds for misery. Seeds for success or seeds for failure. Seeds for peace or seeds for worry. And people don't connect that, number one, we're doing this every day. And people don't connect that they're planting seeds. They think that this worrisomeness or this anxiety or this problem is somehow static. I talked about change earlier. This static thing of worry just came from I need to fix this. And they don't connect that that's really the fruit of these other seeds and behaviors that they planted. I said that I'm in a long-term relationship, and we've focused in these last 3 decades on what seeds are we planting. We talk to each other every month about how things are going, and what are we doing? Are we planting seeds for a long-term relationship? Are we planting seeds for discord and failure and problems? Someone doesn't just cheat in a relationship. You just don't come out home and find out that your spouse has had sex with someone outside of the relationship. That's the fruit of a seed that was planted many, 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 many years ago that you probably didn't notice. It's the little teeny things like greeting your spouse at the door when he or she comes home. I remember this because my mom always did this. My mom didn't work. My dad worked. And whenever my dad came home from work, because you knew the time that he was coming home, my mom kind of wrapped up and she walked over to the side door of the house by the garage. My father would come in, and there was always a step, because you'd come in from the garage door and there was a step. You have to step up to go into the house, or you could turn left and go downstairs in the basement. My father worked as a laborer. He would come home and then go downstairs and shower and then come up. My mom's shorter than my father, which is why I remember the steps. So she would stand on the step. She'd be at the same height as my father. And whenever he came home from work, she always greeted him at the door. And they hugged and they kissed, and then he went down and got and showered. And so many clients, I've got clients who come to me and they talk about their relationship and what can I do to fix it? We're having problems. And I ask them things like, so when your spouse comes home from work, do you go and greet them at the door? they're like stunned. They're like, what? What? Because they're not thinking about, first of all, they're thinking about how can I change the other person? They're thinking this is all a static thing and needs some sort of big fix. And they're not thinking about seeds. But if they think about things as in terms of seeds, it doesn't matter who comes home. Whoever's home second gets greeted at the door. Hi, how are you? So you're not working the computer, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. It's really being attentive to your spouse. And you think about what that seed, what that quality of that seed is, which is, I love you, you're important, I'm attentive to you. What's the fruit of that seed? The fruit of that seed is an attentive, important, value-filled relationship versus, here I am on my smartphone, I'll talk to you later, oh, hi, right? Though one of the things that we know in prevention, I remember this from substance abuse counseling, we would tell families who are having trouble with their kids and doing all of this other stuff, sit down for dinner. At least 3, if not 4 days a week. Family dinner. So it's not a come and go and here and there. Everybody sits down and they eat dinner together. And people would struggle with that. I don't want to do that. What does that have to do with their heroin addiction? Eating dinner has nothing to do with their alcohol use. But we know from prevention studies that families who do those types of things have less issues with their children around addiction. That's the fact. So then you have to say, well, what is it? Nothing. They're not sitting down talking about drugs and alcohol during dinner. They're talking about life. They're talking about how was your day. There's this commitment to spending time with each other. That seed has the qualities of communication, family, support, compassion, all which are antidotes to addiction. So how does the world work? How does the universe work? What's the most fundamental rule? You reap what you sow. So think about the small, teeny things that you're doing today and what you're planting, because you didn't become depressed overnight. You didn't have anxiety overnight. You didn't become overweight overnight. All of these things happen over a long period of time. We would never sit down and plant a tomato seed, and expect that tomorrow we're going to have tomatoes. We just know that doesn't work that way. And we would never plant cucumber seeds expecting that we get tomatoes. If we want tomatoes, we're going to plant tomato seeds. If we want cucumbers, we're going to plant cucumber seeds. The same thing is true in your life. If you want a quality relationship on a daily basis, plant those seeds. If you want a successful business on a daily basis, plant those seeds. That means for businesses, business plans, looking at your finances daily, managing all of those, marketing, all of those important business pieces. People that go out of business don't do those things. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. That was great. To highlight one aspect of what you're saying on top of the sowing seeds, that we often think that we're dealing with big things, like you said, to just highlight this, that we're dealing with big things and we've got to do big things to have big things happen. But in reality, every big thing is just the result of a whole bunch of little things. And if we recognize that if we have a big problem, it's because of a whole bunch of little things that led to that, and a whole bunch of little things will lead to a big solution. And ultimately, if we're looking to transform something in a big way, then a lot of little things, one step at a time will get us there. Trying to take leaps and bounds up the mountain isn't the solution. It just overwhelms us, and then we don't go anywhere. The solution is always, let's just take this one step, and then the next step, and the next step, and the next step, and before we know it, we'll be at the top of the mountain that we're climbing.
That's a great example. In Outward Bound, we would teach people canoeing. And one of the things that happens when you're out canoeing is that at some point the river is going to turn into a lake. Now, this was very apparent when I was in the Everglades canoeing. Was just huge water places, expanses of water everywhere. And what you had to do was you had to pick a point that you wanted to get to. And you and your partner in the canoe had to agree on the same point. That's where you were going. And then every stroke, every paddle, every piece of effort of movement forward in the canoe was not only a movement forward, but an area of correction toward that goal across the lake. And if you didn't do that, you got blown all over the lake. You ended up on the bank someplace. You ended up going extra distances because you had to go all the way around the lake instead of going directly toward that point. The way to get there, like you just said, were these minor self-corrections. And that's an important thing that people need to do every day, but people don't necessarily do. I don't see enough people that come to me for coaching definitely struggle with that. If across the board, that's probably their biggest struggle.
Yeah, and then it's interesting because your metaphor now with the canoe, tying it together with the seeds and with my metaphor of the mountain, you can see there that the secret contained in the seed metaphor is really, you want to know, what am I growing? Where am I headed? What's the goal? And what's the purpose? And then what little step can I take right now that would get me, just a step closer? And that's really what it seems to be. To grow a seed, you're growing the right seed because you know what you're growing, so you make sure you get the right seed, and you put energy into that, and you just one little thing at a time on the way there with a clear direction, a clear purpose, a clear mission, and then eventually you get there. And that's the key, to have the clear destination and take it one step at a time.
Right. Well said.
Yeah, thank you for the great metaphor, the seed. So what do you believe is the most important thing for every person to know? If you could tell every human being on the planet one thing, what would it be?
I think, Jonathan, related to this last piece that we were talking about, seeds, and this piece where you talked about small steps and efforts and small changes, I think the most important thing for every person, especially in Western culture, is to recognize that there are no quick fixes. There are no quick fixes. It's funny, in America, you see, let's look at weight, for example. We are flooded with quick fixes for weight. Totally ignores the whole aspect of you reap what you sow, right? Someone did not become overweight overnight. You didn't suddenly gain 40 pounds in 30 days. Didn't happen. But what is the solution that people look for in losing weight? 40 pounds in 30 days. Sign me up. That's what I want, right? There is this effort that people are looking for quick fixes. And weight's not the only one. Depression's another. I mean, it goes on and on. Depression, relationships. The list seems endless. You go to a doctor and the doctor says, oh, take this pill, everything will be fine. Oh, you have this problem, take this thing, that will be fine. And on it goes. We're looking while we are ignoring this piece of you reap what you sow. We miss this important view of there are no quick fixes. That we expect them to be super quick and instantaneous and solve everything across the board. I'll give you another example. Adult ADHD. Now, there's no such thing. Now, I guess let me preface that before people flood the YouTube video comment section with all kinds of hate pieces. I am sure that people have genuine adult ADHD diagnosis out there. I'm certain of it. But at the same time, I think overall, most people who are diagnosed with ADHD these days really have a serious case of modern life and not ADHD. They are struggling with multiple deadlines, multiple issues, multiple commitments. I can't tell you how many executives come to me and they say to me, I've got ADHD. And I say to them, really? You're the CEO of a company and you've been able to manage all of this growth all over this time and you've got ADHD? Oh yes. If I'm on Concerta, I'm much clearer. And then I ask them, well, what's going on? And I hear, well, this is happening. I have this issue. I have that deadline. I'm married. I have this. My children are doing this. I have to get them to the soccer game. They've got, if you imagine a plate spinner metaphor, they have like 40 plates. And they're like, oh, I can't keep all 40 plates going on at once. Something's dropping. I must have ADHD. In fact, I think that a lot of executives use that almost like a performance drugs, like a workout person using steroids to give them more muscle mass. They're using Concerta and these other things so that they can do more and more and more and more things, right? They're looking for a quick fix. The seeds that they have planted are all of these commitments, deadlines, responsibilities, decisions, problems, issues, all these things that are going everywhere that they feel like they don't think, oh, I need to simplify. Maybe I should take something off my plate. Maybe I'm trying to do too much. I can't work here and take my kid to the soccer game and put the addition on my house and manage the employees who want to go on strike and manage my finances. And they don't think that. They think, I've got ADHD. I want a quick fix. Give me the pill. So whether it's your concentration level, whether it's your weight, whether it's depression, the solution is to look at what seeds you're planting, like I talked about in the last question. And the real solution is to recognize that there's no quick fix for anything. If there is, email me. Let me know what that is. But to my knowledge, there's nothing that can be solved instantly.
I agree. That was good. That's a great message for everyone to hear.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott, for your time and for sharing your story and lessons with me today.
You are very welcome. You are very welcome.
And thank you to all who are watching. Have a great day. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.